The deep silence of space was broken by fire and destruction. The human fleet, once proud and strong, was now surrounded by a sea of alien warships. Explosions tore through the darkness, lighting up the cold stars with flashes of red and gold. The great ships of humanity were burning one after another, their hulls breaking apart under the enemy's heavy fire. It looked like the end. On the command deck of the last surviving battleship, Admiral Kane stood silent. His eyes were fixed on the holographic screen in front of him, where red dots, enemy ships, filled almost the entire map. Only a few blue dots remained, the last ships of the human fleet. His crew worked in silence, their faces pale with fear and exhaustion. They had been fighting for 3 days without rest. Every hour, another ship was lost. Every minute, another friend was gone. The admiral could feel the weight of every death pressing on his shoulders. The Zelnari had come without warning. No message, no demand, only destruction. They were not like any enemy humans had ever faced. Their ships were alive, covered with moving metal skin that healed when hit. Their weapons cut through shields like paper. Humanity's finest technology looked useless against them. As the battle continued, the humans had only one thought left: survive a few more minutes. A young officer turned to the admiral, his voice shaking. "Sir, we've lost communication with the Fifth Fleet. The last message says they were surrounded." The admiral nodded slowly. His voice was calm, too calm. "Understood. Tell all ships to fall back to position Delta. Prepare for emergency retreat." Another explosion shook the deck. Sparks flew from the ceiling. The lights flickered. Somewhere below, a fire alarm screamed. The officer hesitated. "Sir, we can't retreat any further. The enemy has cut off every route." Kane looked at the map again. The red dots were closing in. The Zelnari were tightening their net. Soon, there would be nowhere left to go. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke softly. "Then we fight until the end." His words spread across the bridge. Some crew members straightened their backs. Others looked down, holding back tears. But no one ran. They all knew this was humanity's last stand. Outside, the enemy fleet began its final move. Hundreds of alien ships turned in perfect coordination, forming a deadly ring around the remaining human vessels. Blue energy gathered at the tips of their weapons. It looked beautiful, terrifying, but beautiful. Admiral Kane watched it with cold eyes. "They think we're finished," he murmured. "Let them think that." He pressed a hidden button on his command chair. Deep inside the ship, a coded signal was sent. No one on the bridge noticed. The humans continued to fight, firing every weapon they had. But their lasers barely scratched the alien armor. Every explosion from their cannons seemed small against the vast enemy line. One by one, the human ships vanished from the radar. The crew could only watch as their fleet died. "Sir, the flagship Endeavour is gone," someone whispered. The admiral closed his eyes for a moment. The Endeavour had been the pride of Earth's navy. Its destruction was a symbol of defeat. He opened his eyes again, calm and cold. "Keep firing," he ordered. "Don't give them an easy victory." The ship shook again as another blast hit its side. Smoke filled the bridge. The smell of burning metal spread everywhere. Crew members coughed, but no one left their post. Outside, human fighters darted between alien ships like insects, trying to find weak spots. Few returned. The Zelnari commander watched from his flagship, a massive black ship shaped like a blade. His face was hidden behind a glowing mask. "Humans are stubborn," he said in his sharp, metallic voice. "End it." The alien fleet responded instantly. Thousands of energy beams fired at once, turning space into a storm of light. The human ships vanished in that storm. But in the middle of the chaos, Admiral Kane stood still. He looked at the glowing screen that showed his dying fleet. His hand hovered over one last control. A small green light appeared on the bottom of the screen. The signal had been received. Somewhere out there, beyond the battle, someone had heard it. Kane allowed himself a small smile. Phase 2 begins, he whispered. No one around him understood what he meant. They thought it was madness, talking about a second phase when they were seconds away from death. But Kane knew something the enemy did not. Far behind the Zelnari fleet, in the shadow of a dead moon, something moved. The enemy's sensors were blind to it, hidden by the debris of destroyed ships. A faint blue light blinked once, then vanished. The aliens continued to fire, unaware that they were being watched. "Sir, our main engines are failing," the engineer shouted. "We can't hold much longer." "Then we'll die standing," Kane replied. His voice was calm, proud, almost peaceful. "Record this transmission. To any human ships receiving this message, fight smart. We are not defeated. The enemy thinks we are finished. They are wrong." As the recording was sent, another blast tore through the ship. The bridge was filled with fire and smoke. The admiral held onto his chair, refusing to fall. The last thing he saw on the radar was a flicker of movement behind the enemy fleet. Then the screen went dark. The flagship Valiant was hit directly and started breaking apart. The admiral stood straight, his uniform burned and torn. "Let them celebrate," he said quietly. "They'll never see what's coming next." The ship exploded seconds later, sending a wave of light across the battlefield. The aliens cheered, certain they had won. But behind them, in the cold shadow of space, something was awakening, something human. The fall of the human fleet was not the end. It was only the beginning. The Zelnari fleet drifted through the remains of the human armada like vultures after a feast. Broken ships floated silently, their twisted metal bodies glinting in the pale starlight. Fires still burned inside some wrecks, flickering like dying candles. The alien commander watched the destruction with cold satisfaction. To him, this was not war, it was cleaning. The humans had been loud, stubborn creatures, always fighting for survival, but in the end, they were nothing compared to the power of the Zelnari. The commander turned to his officers and spoke in their sharp, metallic language. "The humans are finished. Begin the recovery process. We will take their data cores and study their weaknesses. The rest, burn." Across the vast blackness, alien drones moved among the wrecks, scanning and harvesting what was left. But far beyond the battlefield, hidden inside the shadows of an asteroid belt, humanity was not dead. It was waiting. Deep within the cold rocks, a formation of small, dark ships floated silently. Their surfaces were coated with stealth materials that bent light and confused sensors. No radar, no signal, no heat, just ghosts drifting in the dark. This was the Ghost Squadron, humanity's secret weapon. They were the best of what remained. Pilots, engineers, soldiers, and spies who had been presumed dead months ago. Their mission was to disappear until the right moment came. And that moment was now. Captain Mira Voss stood at the center of her command ship, the Silent Dagger. The room was dim, lit only by the blue glow of holographic screens. Her short black hair framed a face carved by war and loss. She had seen entire worlds fall, and she had lost more than she could count. But her eyes were steady, sharp, alive with purpose. "Status report," she said quietly. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Rowe, replied in a low voice. "All systems ready, Captain. Weapons charged. Stealth field stable. The enemy fleet is still occupied at the wreck site. They don't know we're here." Mira nodded. "Good. Maintain radio silence. Any signal could expose us." Rowe hesitated for a moment. "Captain, with all due respect, if Admiral Kane is gone, what are we waiting for?" Myra's gaze didn't shift from the hologram showing the enemy formation. "Kane isn't gone. Not yet. He gave the signal." Rowe looked uncertain. "You really think that signal was real? We've been hiding for weeks, and no one's heard a word from command." Mira finally turned to face him. Her eyes were calm, but her voice was firm. "Admiral Kane doesn't waste words. If he said Phase 2 begins, it means we strike. And that means he's still fighting, somehow. Silence fell on the bridge. The crew trusted her. They had followed her into the void when everyone else had given up. They knew she was not the kind of leader who chased ghosts. When she said there was hope, it meant she had a plan. We've analyzed the alien fleet's formation, Mira continued. They think they've won, so they've dropped most of their shields. Their rear defense line is weak, and their flagship's energy core is exposed during recovery operations. That's our target. Ro frowned. That's suicide. There are hundreds of them. Mira smiled faintly. Only if they see us. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. The Ghost Squadron had lived up to its name before, but this would be different. The Zelnari were smarter now, more cautious. Still, the idea of striking back filled them with something they hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Outside the asteroid field, the alien drones continued to move through the wreckage. One of them detected a faint metallic echo. It turned, scanning the darkness. For a moment, it picked up a flicker of motion, a reflection from a hidden ship. But before it could send a signal, a thin beam of light sliced through it. The drone shattered silently. On Myra's screen, a small red mark disappeared. That was close, Ro muttered. Mira nodded. No more mistakes. Prepare the fleet. One by one, the hidden ships powered up their engines, silent, invisible, deadly. They drifted out of the asteroid shadows like ghosts emerging from the grave. Each ship carried stealth torpedoes and EMP charges designed to cripple the enemy without alerting the others. Mira opened a secure channel to all ships. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of command. Ghost Squadron, this is your captain. You've seen what they did to our fleet. You've seen Earth burn. But this fight isn't over. We're not running anymore. We strike now, from the shadows. Remember, they think we're gone. Let's remind them who we are. The crew responded in quiet determination. Every pilot knew this could be their last mission, but none hesitated. They had already been living like ghosts, now they would fight like them. The fleet began to move, gliding between asteroids, following the narrow path toward the enemy's rear line. The darkness swallowed them completely. Minutes passed like hours. Mira watched the radar carefully. Every second, she expected to see detection alarms. But none came. The aliens were too busy celebrating their false victory. Target range in 3 minutes, Ro whispered. Weapons ready. Mira leaned forward. Her heart was steady. Let them come closer. I want their flagship within strike distance before we begin. Outside, the silent ships spread out, forming a loose formation behind a cluster of massive rocks. The alien fleet loomed ahead, glowing with the energy of hundreds of engines. The silent dagger scanners locked onto the Zelnari flagship, a monstrous vessel surrounded by smaller escorts. Its design was elegant and terrifying, like a living blade. Mira stared at it. That's the heart of the beast, she said softly. If we cut that out, the rest will fall. Ro gave a thin smile. And if we fail? Myra's expression didn't change. Then we make sure they never forget we tried. A quiet hum filled the bridge as power built up in the ship's weapons. Myra's voice came through the intercom one last time. All ships, on my mark. Stay in the dark until I say fire. Once we attack, no turning back. The timer on the screen reached 0. The Zelnari fleet was now directly ahead, unaware of what was behind them. Mira took a deep breath. For a brief second, she thought of Earth, of the blue oceans she hadn't seen in years. Then she opened her eyes, cold and focused. Ghost Squadron, she said quietly. Targets locked. In that moment, every ship aligned its sights on the enemy. The silence before the storm was heavy and endless. Far away, the aliens continued their work, still believing the humans were nothing but dust. They didn't know that in the darkness behind them, humanity's vengeance had already begun. The silence of space was deep and endless, broken only by the faint hum of engines running cold. The Ghost Squadron drifted in the shadows, waiting. Every second stretched like an eternity. The alien fleet ahead of them glowed with blue light, massive and alive, unaware that death was creeping up from behind. Inside the silent dagger, Captain Mira Voss stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Each green dot on the screen represented one of her ships, small, fragile, but deadly. The red dots that filled the other half of the map were the enemy. So many that it made the human fleet look like dust. Mira took a slow breath and spoke quietly into her headset. "Transmit the coded signal." Her communications officer hesitated. "Captain, if we transmit, they might detect us." Myra's eyes stayed locked on the screen. "They won't. The signal will ride the enemy's own communication waves. It'll sound like background noise. Send it now." The officer nodded and pressed the command. Across the void, a faint pulse of encrypted data shot through the darkness. No one on the alien ships noticed. But far away, on the damaged remains of Admiral Kane's cruiser, a small receiver blinked once, green. Inside what was left of the command deck, Kane sat in the half-dark, surrounded by smoke and flickering lights. The ship was broken, engines dead, but the communication system still worked. When he saw the signal, his tired eyes sharpened. "They made it," he whispered. He turned to the one surviving officer beside him. "Get me a direct line to the Ghost Squadron." The officer hesitated. "Sir, long-range comms are jammed. We can't contact them without revealing their position." Kane thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Then we won't speak. We'll answer." He reached over to a cracked console and typed a short code. A single light on Myra's screen blinked, a reply. Her chest tightened with relief. "That's him," she said. Lieutenant Rowe looked over her shoulder. "So Kane's alive." "Alive and watching," Mira said softly. "He knows it's time." The crew exchanged glances. The thought of the Admiral still out there gave them strength. Mira turned back to her team. "Prepare the first strike. We'll begin with EMP torpedoes. Aim for their power relays and sensor arrays. We blind them first, then hit the engines." "Understood," Rowe said, his hands moving over the controls. "All ships, synchronize timers. Fire on command." The crew moved with quiet precision. No one spoke louder than a whisper. Outside, the dark shapes of human ships began to drift closer, sliding through the asteroid shadows. Each one carried a payload strong enough to cripple a cruiser. Mira looked out the viewing window. The enemy fleet filled the horizon, huge and arrogant. She could almost feel their confidence through the cold glass. They thought humanity was dead. That thought made her smile. "Let them think so," she murmured. "Let them laugh while they can." On the alien flagship, the Zelnari commander received a report from one of his subordinates. "Commander, sensors detect faint energy fluctuations near the outer debris field." The tall alien turned his head, his mask glowing faintly. "Human survivors? Unlikely. No life signs. Possibly reactor remnants." The commander gave a dismissive gesture. "Ignore it. Focus on recovery. I want every human data core decrypted before the next phase." "Yes, Commander." The officer turned away. Behind him, the faint energy reading vanished, erased by the Ghost Squadron's stealth systems. Myra's voice came through the intercom, low and calm. "All ships, ready positions. Set course for enemy flank. Engines at 10%, silent mode only." The fleet moved like shadows across the void. Every light on their hulls was off. They glided silently behind the enemy formation, unseen, unheard. Rowe glanced at his display and frowned. "Captain, we're entering their sensor range." Mira nodded. "Maintain silence. If they detect us, we're done." The seconds crawled by. One ship passed dangerously close to an alien drone. The crew held their breath. The drone drifted past without reacting. It was blind. "We're in position," Rowe whispered. Mira stared at the glowing red target on the screen. the heart of the alien fleet, their main energy core. Good. Set all torpedoes to remote detonation. EMP charge at maximum. We hit them, and they go blind. Understood. Firing sequence ready. Mira looked around at her crew. They were young, tired, but fearless. Listen up, she said softly. We've been hiding for too long. The Zelnari think they can erase us. But we're not ghosts, we're humans. And tonight, they'll remember that. A moment of silence followed. Then she gave the order. Launch. In perfect coordination, a wave of torpedoes shot out from the hidden fleet, silent as death. They moved through the darkness, invisible to alien sensors, each one programmed with precise coordinates. The alien commander turned suddenly, his instincts sensing something wrong. Wait, he said. What was that? But it was too late. The torpedoes hit. A burst of blue-white light exploded across the enemy fleet. The shockwave rippled through the alien ships. Power systems flickered. Screens went black. The Zelnari shouted in confusion as their communications died. One by one, the lights on their massive vessels dimmed. EMP strike, one alien officer screamed. We're blind. Find the source, the commander roared. But there was nothing to find. In the chaos, Myra's fleet moved in closer. They're down, Rose said with a grin. Their sensors are fried. Now we hit them hard, Mira said. All ships, fire at will. The silence of space shattered. Human weapons lit up the darkness. Missiles and plasma beams slammed into the alien ships, tearing holes through their armor. Explosions bloomed across the fleet like stars being born. The Zelnari fired back blindly, hitting nothing but empty space. The Ghost Squadron moved with deadly precision, striking and vanishing, then striking again. It was chaos, a beautiful, perfect chaos. On the alien flagship, alarms screamed. The commander slammed his fists against the console. How? He roared. How can they be attacking? They were destroyed. But even as he spoke, another explosion shook his ship. Half his fleet was burning. Mira watched from the silent Dagger's bridge, her eyes reflecting the fire outside. That's for every world you destroyed, she whispered. Then she opened a private channel to Admiral Kane's frequency. Static filled the line, then cleared just enough for her voice to be heard. Admiral, this is Ghost Leader. Phase 2 complete. Targets engaged. Humanity fights on. There was silence for a moment, then Kane's voice came through, weak but steady. Good work, Captain. The enemy won't understand what's happening until it's too late. Begin Phase 3. Myra's jaw tightened. She knew what Phase 3 meant. It was the full assault, the point of no return. Understood, she said. She turned to her crew. Prepare next strike. And someone play the anthem. Ro blinked. The anthem, Captain? Yes, Mira said. Let them hear who we are. A soft, haunting melody filled the ship, a fragment of Earth's anthem, carried through the comms as they charged their weapons again. Outside, the alien fleet burned in silence, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble. Mira whispered to herself, May Earth forgive us. Then she gave the final order. Phase 3 begins. The silence after the explosion was short-lived. Across the star-filled void, the Zelnari fleet flickered in confusion. Their energy grids were broken, their communication lines cut, their sensors dark. What had been an invincible armada moments ago now drifted like wounded beasts. In the shadows behind them, the Ghost Squadron moved again. Their engines glowed faintly, blue trails snaking through the darkness as they split into attack wings. Captain Mira Voss stood in the dim light of her bridge, eyes locked on the map that showed chaos spreading through the enemy ranks. They're blind, she said quietly. Keep them that way. Target the cruisers first, take out anything with heavy guns. Lieutenant Rowe nodded and relayed the order. The first human ships broke formation, darting between asteroids and debris. Their torpedoes flew like sparks through the dark, striking alien vessels one by one. The first detonation tore a hole through the Zelnari's outer line, the second set off a chain of reactor fires. The alien commander shouted orders in fury, but his words vanished in the static. No one could hear him. His fleet had gone deaf. On the silent dagger, the crew watched as glowing wrecks filled the display. For the first time in months, human ships were winning. Direct hit on enemy cruiser. Rowe reported, excitement in his voice. Their power core is unstable. Mira didn't smile. Don't stop. Keep moving. The moment we slow down, they'll adapt. Her tone was calm, but her heart raced. The plan was working, but it was dangerous. The Ghost Squadron had only minutes before the aliens recalibrated. Every second counted. Outside, debris drifted past like snow. Human fighters weaved between burning ships, firing precision strikes at engines and weak spots. The Zelnari tried to regroup, but without sensors, their coordination was gone. Some of their ships fired wildly, hitting their own allies. The battlefield had turned into a storm of light and fire. Myra's voice cut through the comms. Focus fire on their command carriers. If we cut off their leaders, the rest will crumble. One by one, the smaller human ships responded. Missiles streaked across the black, hitting the alien carriers in bright bursts of white. The explosions rippled outward, shaking the rest of the fleet. From the bridge of his crippled flagship, the Zelnari commander watched in disbelief. His ships were falling apart, destroyed by enemies he could not see. "Find them," he roared. "Find the ghosts." His officers scrambled, trying to restore power, but the systems refused to respond. The electromagnetic pulse had buried itself deep in their circuits. It would take hours to repair. They didn't have hours. Mira glanced at the holographic timer. The EMP effect would fade in 5 minutes. After that, the aliens would recover. She needed to finish this before then. "All ships, converge on the flagship," she ordered. "We end it now." Her fleet changed course, closing in on the largest enemy vessel, the black, blade-shaped ship at the center of the chaos. It was surrounded by burning wrecks, but its core still pulsed with life. "They'll try to protect their commander," Rowe warned. "Good," Mira said. "That'll make them predictable." The human ships streaked toward the flagship, weaving through laser fire and debris. Alien turrets came online, spitting blue plasma across the void. 2 human fighters exploded instantly, vanishing in silent flashes. "They've regained partial power," someone shouted. Mira clenched her jaw. "Keep going. We're too close to stop now." The silent dagger dove under a burning cruiser, skimming past its ruptured hull. Fragments of molten metal bounced off the shields. Ahead, the alien flagship loomed larger and larger, its surface crawling with energy as it struggled to reboot. "Torpedoes ready," Rowe said. "Target locked. Fire," Mira ordered. The ship shuddered as a barrage of torpedoes launched into the void. They hit the flagship's shield wall, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire barrier cracked like glass. The explosion that followed tore through the upper decks of the alien ship. A massive shockwave rippled outward, scattering smaller vessels. "Direct hit," Rowe shouted. "Their shields are down." Mira gripped the console. "All ships, full assault. Don't let them recover." The human fleet surged forward, pouring everything they had into the attack. Streams of plasma fire rained down on the alien flagship. The ship's dark surface burned, splitting open to reveal glowing veins of blue energy beneath. Inside, the Zelnari commander stumbled as the deck shook violently. "How?" he growled. "How can they be this strong?" An officer turned to him, terrified. "Commander, our weapon core is unstable. If it overloads, then let it," the commander roared. "If we are to die, they die with us." He reached toward a control panel and slammed his clawed hand onto a red sigil. Outside, the flagship began to glow brighter. The energy inside it was building fast. Too fast. Myra's scanners detected the surge instantly. "They're overloading their core," Rose said in horror. "Captain, that's a planet killer. If it detonates, everything within range will be wiped out." Myra's stomach turned cold. "How long?" 3 minutes, maybe less." The bridge went silent for a heartbeat. Everyone knew there was no time to escape. Mira straightened. "We're not running. If that weapon goes off, it'll reach Earth's colony worlds. We stop it here." Rose stared at her. "How?" "We can't destroy it fast enough." Myra's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll have to get inside." She opened a direct channel to Admiral Kane's signal. "Admiral, the flagship is activating a superweapon. We can't stop it from outside. I'm taking a strike team in." Static filled the line, then Kane's weak voice came through. "Understood, Captain. If you can disable it, do it. The rest of the fleet will cover you." "Yes, sir." Mira turned to her crew. "Prep the boarding team. 5 volunteers only. We're going in through the ruptured hull." Rose stepped forward without hesitation. "You'll need me to handle the reactors." "Good," Mira said. "Suit up." The silent dagger moved closer to the burning flagship, dodging falling debris. Massive pieces of armor floated past, glowing with heat. The alien ship's core pulsed brighter, lighting up the battlefield like a rising sun. "Captain," Rose said, checking his weapon. "If this thing blows before we finish..." Mira cut him off. "Then we make sure it takes them, not us." She looked out the viewport one last time. The stars were distant, cold, beautiful. Then she said softly, "For Earth." The silent dagger's docking claws locked onto the alien hull with a metallic thud. The airlock hissed open. Myra's team stepped into the smoke-filled corridor of the enemy ship, weapons ready. Behind them, the battle still raged outside. The humans had turned the ambush into a counterattack, but now the fight had entered its final stage. Mira led the way deeper into the burning alien flagship, toward the glowing heart of the weapon. The clock was ticking, and every second brought the end closer, for both sides. The air inside the alien flagship was thick with smoke and the smell of burning metal. The corridors pulsed faintly with blue light that came from the living walls, like veins inside a creature that refused to die. Captain Mira Voss moved quickly through the dark passage, her pulse steady despite the chaos around her. Behind her, Lieutenant Rowe and 4 soldiers followed, their weapons raised, scanning every corner. The walls whispered in a strange alien language as the ship tried to heal itself, sealing wounds and rebuilding circuits. The sound made Myra's skin crawl. She knew they were deep inside enemy territory, with no way back if the ship exploded. But turning back wasn't an option. The Zelnari weapon core was somewhere below them, and if it detonated, it would destroy everything within millions of kilometers. "Rowe, how far to the core?" Mira asked, her voice low but firm. Rowe checked his wrist scanner. 2 levels down, through that chamber ahead. "But we've got movement, 3 life signs closing fast." Mira raised her rifle and crouched behind a twisted bulkhead. The others took cover. A moment later, 3 alien soldiers rounded the corner, their armor gleaming with faint light. Mira fired first. The blast hit the lead alien square in the chest, dropping it instantly. The others returned fire, their weapons slicing through the air with a hiss of blue plasma. The corridor lit up with light and sparks as metal melted and walls shattered. Rowe tossed a shock grenade, and a pulse of white light filled the hall. The 2 remaining aliens fell, motionless. The team moved again, stepping over the bodies. "No time to waste," Mira said. "They'll know we're here soon." They entered a large chamber filled with strange machinery that pulsed with light. At the center stood a massive pillar of crystal and metal, glowing like a star trapped inside glass. Energy arced across it, lighting the room in blinding flashes. Rose stared at it in awe. "That's it, the core." Mira approached carefully, shielding her eyes. The hum was so deep it felt like the air itself was vibrating. "Can you disable it?" Rowe shook his head slowly. Not from here. It's designed like a living organism. There's no off switch. But maybe. He stopped, then began scanning the structure. After a few seconds, he pointed to a panel near the base. There's a control interface inside this section. I can access it, but it'll take time. And if I mess up, it'll trigger the detonation faster. Do it, Mira said without hesitation. We don't have time to be careful. Ro knelt by the panel and began to work, connecting his datapad to the alien system. Streams of alien symbols flashed across his screen. Mira turned to the others. Form a perimeter. Nothing gets in or out. The soldiers spread out, taking positions near the entrances. Mira kept her rifle ready, eyes sweeping the room. Her heart beat hard against her chest. Every second felt heavier than the last. Ro worked quickly, typing commands, overriding alien codes. Sweat ran down his forehead. Captain, he said quietly, this thing is alive. It's resisting me. Then make it bleed, Mira replied. Suddenly, the ground shook. A deep rumble echoed through the ship. They've started the overload manually. Ro shouted. They're trying to take us with them. Mira looked up at the glowing core. The light was growing brighter, pulsing faster. How long? Maybe 5 minutes, no more. Ro said. Myra's mind raced. They wouldn't make it out in time. She opened her comm and contacted Admiral Kane. Admiral, the flagship's weapon is overloading. We're inside, trying to stop it. Kane's voice came through, rough but steady. Can you shut it down? We're trying, but it's not responding to standard commands, she said. If we can't stop it, we'll detonate before it fires. There was silence for a moment. Then Kane said quietly, Understood. Do what you must, Captain. Earth is counting on you. The line went dead. Mira turned back to Ro. What if we destroy the control matrix? Ro looked up, eyes wide. That would stop the overload, but the energy backlash would vaporize anything within this chamber. Then we make sure it's us, not them, Mira said. Before Ro could protest, she saw movement near the doorway. More aliens. 6 of them, heavily armed, stormed in with weapons raised. Mira and her team opened fire immediately. The room filled with blinding light, plasma, and smoke. The walls screamed as energy bolts tore through the air. One of Myra's soldiers went down, hit in the chest. Another screamed as an alien blade cut through his arm. Mira threw a grenade, and the blast sent 3 aliens flying backward. But 2 kept advancing. Ro ducked behind the console, still typing frantically. Almost there, he shouted. Mira took aim and fired again, taking 1 alien down. The last one lunged toward her, but she sidestepped and drove her knife into its throat. The alien collapsed, twitching. For a moment, there was silence, except for the rising hum of the core. The light was blinding now. The whole chamber vibrated like a heartbeat. Ro stood up, face pale. I found a shutdown code. But it's protected by a biolock. It needs a living signature from the system's creator. Mira frowned. Can you bypass it? Ro hesitated. Maybe, if I had the right DNA sample. He stopped suddenly, staring at a shadow on the far side of the room. There, half hidden behind cables, was a glass pod. Inside it was a figure, a human. The team froze. Mira stepped closer, disbelief on her face. What the hell? The pod opened with a hiss. The figure inside fell forward, coughing. He was weak, thin, his face pale under the flickering lights. He looked at Mira with wide eyes. You're human, she said. The man nodded weakly. Name's Dr. Harlan Pierce. I was part of the first contact program, before they took me. Ro's eyes widened. You worked for the Zelnari? Pierce shook his head slowly. Not willingly. They forced me to design the weapon. I didn't know what it would become until it was too late. Mira pointed to the core. Can you stop it? Pierce glanced at the glowing structure, then nodded grimly. Yes, but it'll require manual input inside the core chamber. The system will reject anyone not bound to it. That means whoever goes in won't come out. Mira met his eyes. Show me how. Ro tried to stop her. Captain, you can't. We don't have a choice, Mira said firmly. If this thing detonates, humanity dies. If I go in, we live. Pierce quickly explained the sequence, typing on the console as the ship groaned around them. Once you enter the chamber, you'll have 60 seconds to enter the shutdown code. After that, the failsafe will trigger. You must complete it before the pulse reaches critical mass. Mira nodded, stepping toward the access tunnel. The heat from the core was already unbearable. Captain, Ro said, his voice shaking. There has to be another way. Mira looked back at him and smiled faintly. There's always another way. But this one's mine. She lifted her weapon, saluted her team, and climbed into the tunnel. The light swallowed her instantly. Behind her, the core pulsed faster, as if sensing her presence. The room shook harder. Ro stared at the console, tears in his eyes, as the countdown began. 60 seconds, he whispered. Godspeed, Captain. Deep inside the glowing core, surrounded by light and fire, Mira reached the central terminal. She placed her hand on the control pad, felt the system recognize her as the intruder, and began entering the shutdown code. The explosion never came. Instead, there was silence. Deep, endless silence. Then, a wave of energy rippled outward from the alien flagship, bright as a newborn star. Every ship in the sector, human and Zelnari alike, was thrown off course. Systems flickered, engines died, and for a long moment, the void itself seemed to hold its breath. On the bridge of the silent dagger, Lieutenant Ro stared at the viewscreen in shock. The flagship was collapsing inward, its glowing core folding in on itself like a dying sun. Captain, he whispered, but his voice broke. Mira was gone. The ship shuddered as the wave hit, tossing the crew against their consoles. Warning lights blazed across the control panels, but Ro barely noticed. All he could see was the massive sphere of light growing brighter, then fading until only debris remained. Core detonation contained, reported one of the engineers weakly. The weapon didn't go off. She did it. Ro sank into his seat, hands trembling. She saved us, he murmured. Across the fleet, damaged ships began transmitting the same message. The flagship is down. The weapon is neutralized. Cheers erupted across comm channels. But the victory felt hollow. There was no celebration in Ro's chest, only the heavy weight of loss. He stood slowly and turned to the viewport, watching the fragments of the alien flagship drift silently through space. Mira Voss, he said quietly. You just changed everything. Outside, the battlefield was still. Human ships circled the remains of the enemy, cautious but awed. The once mighty Zelnari fleet had lost its leader, its weapon, and its will to fight. Without their command structure, the remaining ships began retreating, folding into jump space and vanishing into the dark. For the first time in years, humanity had survived an encounter they were never meant to win. Ro opened a channel to Admiral Kane. The old man's voice came through, rough and tired. Lieutenant, report. Ro took a breath. The core is destroyed, sir. The Zelnari are retreating. But Captain Voss, she didn't make it. There was silence. Then Kane said, understood. Her sacrifice saved millions. Get your ships home, Lieutenant. It's over. Ro nodded, though his throat was tight. Aye, sir. Plotting course for Earth. The silent dagger turned away from the wreckage. Engines roared back to life, and one by one, the surviving ships followed. The stars stretched into long white lines as they jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the graveyard of ships and the ashes of war. Days later, the fleet arrived in orbit around Earth. The blue planet hung beneath them, calm and beautiful, a reminder of what they had fought for. Crowds filled every city as news spread across the colonies. Humanity had survived the impossible. The Battle of Vorn's Edge, as historians would later call it, became the single greatest military turnaround in human history. But for those who fought there, it wasn't a story of glory. It was a story of loss, of sacrifice, and of one woman who refused to surrender. Rose stood before the memorial window in the fleet's main command center. Below him, ships floated in perfect formation, their hulls newly repaired but still scarred by battle. A quiet ceremony was underway. A holographic image of Captain Mira Voss shimmered in the air, calm, brave, eyes full of determination. Admiral Kane spoke slowly, his voice heavy with emotion. Captain Voss led us through the darkest battle humanity has ever faced. When hope was gone, she made a choice that gave us light. Her courage will not be forgotten. The entire room stood in silence. Soldiers saluted. Pilots bowed their heads. Roe watched, his jaw tight, his heart pounding with grief and pride. He could still hear her voice, steady and calm even in the face of death. For Earth. When the ceremony ended, Roe walked out onto the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass. He touched the pendant Mira had left behind, a small metal insignia with the symbol of the Ghost Squadron. It had been found floating near the debris of the alien flagship, miraculously intact. "You always said ghosts never die," he whispered. "Guess you were right." He turned as footsteps approached. It was Dr. Pierce, still weak but recovering after being rescued from the wreck. His eyes were tired, full of guilt. "I'm the reason that weapon existed," Pierce said softly. "If she hadn't stopped it." Rose shook his head. "You gave us the chance to stop it. She took it. That's what soldiers do." Pierce nodded slowly, but the pain didn't leave his face. "The Zelnari won't stop, you know. Losing their weapon will only make them angry." Roe looked out into space, where the stars glimmered like distant fires. "Then we'll be ready next time. Because she showed us how to fight smarter. How to strike from the shadows." In the months that followed, humanity rebuilt faster than anyone expected. The Ghost Squadron became legendary, their tactics studied by every fleet commander. But among them, the name Mira Voss carried a power no ship could match. Children learned her story in school, colonies built statues in her honor. And in the quiet halls of the fleet's academy, her final transmission was engraved in steel. "We are not outnumbered. We are the storm." But the war wasn't truly over. Far beyond the reach of human scanners, in a distant system bathed in red light, a surviving Zelnari warlord watched the battle recordings from the wreckage of the flagship. His 4 eyes burned with fury. "So, the humans think they have won," he hissed. "They forget. We adapt." Around him, engineers worked feverishly, rebuilding damaged ships, studying fragments of the weapon core. The warlord turned to his second-in-command. "Prepare the next fleet. Let them rebuild their hope. We will burn it down." Back on Earth, Rose stood at the edge of the academy courtyard, staring at the night sky. He had taken command of the Silent Dagger, now refitted and ready for duty. A young cadet approached him and saluted. "Sir, they say the Ghost Squadron will lead the next expedition. Is that true?" Roe looked at her, then at the stars. "Yes," he said quietly. "Because peace is just the pause between wars." He placed the pendant back around his neck, the symbol of Mira Voss gleaming faintly under the starlight. "And this time," he added softly, "we won't be caught off guard." The cadet hesitated, then asked, "Sir, do you think she'd be proud?" Roe smiled faintly. "She'd tell us to stop talking and get to work." The night sky shimmered as the Earth's defense grid activated, thousands of satellites linking together in a web of light. Humanity was no longer waiting to be saved, they were preparing to fight back. And far out among the stars, where wrecks of alien ships still drifted in silence, a faint signal blinked, a human distress beacon. It came from deep space, near the ruins of the Zelnari flagship. Rose stared at the signal in disbelief as the computer translated the code. It was faint, broken, but clear enough to read, "This is Captain Mira Voss. If you can hear this, I'm not dead. And they're not gone. The control room of the silent dagger was filled with tense silence as the faint signal repeated over and over again. This is Captain Mira Voss. If you can hear this. I'm not dead. And they're not gone. Lieutenant Rowe stared at the screen, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. The words didn't make sense. Mira had been inside the alien core when it detonated. There was no way she could have survived. And yet, the signal was unmistakably her voice. Calm, steady, and undeniably human. Are we sure it's real? Asked one of the technicians. It could be an echo or a data ghost from the explosion. Rowe shook his head. No. Look at the modulation patterns. That's not interference. It's a live transmission. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Where's it coming from? Rowe demanded. The technician tapped the console. Coordinates place it near the remains of the Zelnari flagship, deep in the outer rim. But there's something strange about the signal. It's fragmented, like it's being rebroadcast through alien tech. Rowe leaned over the console, staring at the data feed. She's alive, he whispered, half to himself. Then louder, prepare a recon team. We're going back. Admiral Kane appeared on the main comm screen a few minutes later, his face grim. You realize what you're suggesting, Lieutenant? That sector is still unstable. Radiation levels are off the charts. The Zelnari left traps behind. No one's come out alive from that area since the battle. Rowe met his gaze. Sir, if there's even a chance she's alive, we have to try. You know what she means, to all of us, to humanity. Kane hesitated, then sighed deeply. You have 48 hours. Take only what you need. If it's a trap, you get out. Understood. Understood, Rowe said firmly. The transmission ended. Rowe turned to his crew. Set course for the Vorn's Edge debris field. Stealth mode only. We move now. The silent dagger launched silently from orbit, its engines burning faintly blue as it slipped into the black void once more. The journey took 3 days at full stealth speed. During that time, the crew barely slept. The thought of Mira, alive somewhere out there, kept them awake. Rowe replayed the message countless times, searching for clues. There was something odd about it, a faint distortion in her voice, as if layered beneath another frequency. Dr. Pierce joined him in the observation bay on the second night. You've listened to it 100 times, Pierce said softly. It doesn't change. Maybe not, Rowe replied, but something about it feels off. Like she's trying to say more than the words allow. Pierce frowned. If she's transmitting through Zelnari tech, it's possible the signal is being filtered. She might be trapped inside their system. Rowe turned sharply. Trapped? You mean like, digitally? Pierce nodded. The Zelnari had bio-digital fusion tech. It's possible that when the core collapsed, her mind was absorbed instead of destroyed. Rowe stared at him. So you're saying she's not just alive, she's inside their network? It's a theory, Pierce said. But if it's true, she could be communicating through whatever's left of their system. The question is, who's helping her? On the 4th day, the silent dagger arrived at the edge of the debris field. The stars here were dim, choked by clouds of metallic dust and drifting wrecks. The remains of ships, both human and alien, floated silently, their hulls torn and twisted. The sensors crackled with radiation. It's like a graveyard, one of the crew whispered. No lights, no life signs. Rowe activated the scanner. Lock onto that signal. Find the source. The system pinged faintly, then stabilized. Got it, said the tech. It's coming from that section of the wreckage. Looks like part of the alien flagship's reactor chamber. Rowe nodded. Prepare the shuttle. I'm going down there myself. Pierce frowned. You shouldn't go alone. I'm not, Rowe said. You're coming with me. Minutes later, the shuttle detached from the silent dagger and glided silently through the wreckage. The view outside was haunting, vast fields of twisted metal glowing faintly in the starlight. As they approached the source of the signal, Ro could see the remnants of the alien core chamber. The structure was half collapsed, shards of energy still pulsing weakly between broken spires. "We're close," Pierce said. Signal strength rising. They landed on a jagged platform and stepped out, weapons drawn. The air was thin, the silence absolute. Ro's helmet lights swept across the wreckage. "Keep your eyes open," he said. "If this is a trap, it'll be here." They moved deeper into the ruins. Strange organic cables hung from the ceiling, twitching faintly as if alive. The ground pulsed under their boots, still charged with residual energy. Suddenly, Ro's communicator crackled. "Ro," a voice whispered. He froze. It was her voice, clearer this time. "Mira," he said. "Is that you?" The voice came again, soft but strained. "You shouldn't be here. They can hear you." Pierce looked around in alarm. "Who's they?" he asked. Ro ignored him. "Where are you, Mira?" "We came to bring you home." There was a pause, then the voice replied, "Home? I can't leave, not yet. They're rebuilding." The signal flickered violently, and for a split second, the ground beneath them pulsed with bright blue light. Pierce's scanner beeped frantically. "Something's alive down here," he shouted. Multiple readings, closing fast. From the shadows ahead, shapes began to emerge. Tall, thin, metallic creatures with glowing eyes. They moved silently, like phantoms. "Defense drones." Ro yelled, raising his rifle. "Fall back." Plasma fire filled the air as the drones advanced. Their armor reflected light like liquid metal. Ro and Pierce fired rapidly, taking down two, but more kept coming. "They're protecting the signal source," Pierce shouted. "It's part of the core system." "Then we fight through," Ro growled. The battle raged in the narrow corridor. Sparks flew, smoke filled the air, and the heat was unbearable. Finally, Ro tossed an EMP grenade, and the shockwave rippled through the hall, disabling the last few drones. The silence returned, but the blue light from deeper inside continued to glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. They pushed forward until they reached a massive chamber. In the center stood a crystal-like pod, half buried in debris. Inside it was a figure, human, floating in a faint blue haze. Mira Voss. Ro froze, breath catching in his throat. "She's alive," he whispered. Pierce moved closer, scanning. Her body's intact, but her neural patterns, they're fused with the Zelnari network. "She's part of it now." The pod lights flickered, and Myra's eyes opened slowly. She looked at them through the glass, her expression calm but distant. "Ro," she said softly, her voice echoing through the comms without moving her lips. "You shouldn't have come. We thought you were dead," Ro said, stepping forward. "We came to bring you home." Myra's gaze softened. "I'm not dead. But I'm not alive either. When the core collapsed, it pulled me in. I can see everything now. Their systems, their plans. They're rebuilding faster than we can imagine." Pierce stared at her. "Can we free you?" "No," Mira said quietly. "If you disconnect me, they'll find you. I'm the only thing keeping them from waking up completely." Ro clenched his fists. "There has to be a way." Mira shook her head. "You have to leave. Tell Kane the war isn't over. The Zelnari are coming back, stronger. And next time, they won't just come for Earth." Her voice began to fade as the pod's glow intensified. The silent dagger drifted through deep space, its hull scarred and blackened from the rescue mission. On the bridge, the crew sat in silence. The flickering holographic screen showed the last fragments of the data Mira had transmitted before the explosion. Alien symbols, codes, coordinates, all jumbled together. But hidden within them was something far more terrifying. Lieutenant Ro stood at the console, staring at the decoded message. "They're rebuilding," he said quietly. "Not one fleet. Many. Entire armadas forming on the outer edge of the Orion Belt." Dr. Pierce leaned closer, his face pale. And this, he pointed at one cluster of symbols, is a new signature. It's not just the Zelnari anymore. They've allied with something else. Something bigger. The words hung in the air like ice. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Rose said what everyone was thinking. Mira was right. The war isn't over. It's just beginning. He turned to the helm. Set course for Earth. We need to warn Command. The stars streaked past as the ship jumped to hyperspace. The hum of the engines filled the silence, but inside Rose's mind, the sound of Myra's voice echoed endlessly. I'm the only thing keeping them from waking up completely. He gripped the console tightly. We'll keep fighting, Mira, he whispered. We'll be ready. When the silent dagger reached Earth orbit, the Fleet Command Center was already buzzing with activity. Admiral Kane stood at the main viewing deck, watching as Rowe and Pierce entered. You brought back more than a ghost story, I hope, Kane said, though his tone was heavy with worry. Rowe placed a datapad on the table. Sir, it's real. Myra's alive, or at least her consciousness is. She's merged with the Zelnari network. She sent us this. He activated the projection. A series of star maps and encrypted data filled the air, showing clusters of activity across several star systems. Kane frowned deeply. My God. That's half the galaxy. Pierce nodded grimly. They're not retreating, sir. They're reorganizing. They've built new command worlds, hive-like fortresses powered by what's left of their AI cores. Kane stared at the hologram. And Myra's keeping them in check? For now, Rose said. But her signal's weakening. The longer she stays connected, the more they'll adapt. Eventually, they'll absorb her completely. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. If the Zelnari took Myra's knowledge, they'd know every human strategy, every defense code, every secret. She would become their weapon. Kane finally spoke, his voice hard as steel. Then we have two missions. 1, to prepare for the invasion. And 2, to bring her back, no matter the cost. Rowe nodded firmly. We'll need a new fleet. A stealth armada. Something that can fight in the shadows like she did. Kane gave a small, grim smile. Then let's build one. Months passed. Across human space, preparations began. Shipyards glowed with new life, forging vessels faster and stronger than ever before. Scientists worked day and night, studying the alien fragments recovered from the wrecks. And deep beneath Earth's surface, in a massive underground facility, Project Phoenix was born. A secret operation dedicated to rescuing Mira Voss and striking first against the returning Zelnari. Rowe was placed in command. The Ghost Squadron was reborn. In the dark hangar, Rowe stood before a line of sleek new ships, jet black, silent, equipped with the latest cloaking systems. Pierce walked up beside him, carrying a tablet. The Neural Sync project is ready, he said. We can link human minds directly into the AI systems. Controlled, but dangerous. Rowe looked at him. You're talking about fighting the Zelnari on their own turf, digitally. Pierce nodded. Exactly. If we can enter their network, we might find Mira. But it means connecting to the same system that nearly killed her. Rowe looked out over the ships. She risked everything for us. We'll do the same. The Ghost Squadron launched 6 months later. Their mission: infiltrate the Zelnari's new command world and locate the source of the psychic signal still echoing through the void. As the fleet prepared to jump, Rowe stood on the bridge of the new Silent Dagger 2, staring at the image of Mira projected on his console. It was a reconstruction, pieced together from her last messages. We're coming for you, he whispered. Just hold on. The countdown began. All systems ready, the pilot said. Engage. The stars stretched once again as the fleet vanished into hyperspace. When they arrived, the sight that greeted them was both magnificent and horrifying. Before them floated a colossal structure, a planet-sized construct pulsing with blue and black light. It was not built. It had grown. That's not a ship, Pierce said in awe. That's alive. The scanners confirmed it. The Zelnari had created a hybrid world, a fusion of machine and organism, feeding on nearby stars for power. At its heart, deep within the tangled web of energy, was the faint human signal. Mira. That's her, Rose said. She's inside that thing. The fleet cloaked itself and moved closer. Swarms of alien drones patrolled the space around the living world, their movements perfectly synchronized. Rose studied the patterns carefully. They're not random, he said. They're protecting something, an access point. He pointed to a massive structure near the planet's equator, glowing brighter than the rest. That's where we go in. The Ghost Squadron descended, dodging energy storms and alien patrols. They landed near the structure's surface, their ships blending seamlessly with the dark biomechanical terrain. Rowe and his team disembarked, weapons ready. The ground beneath their boots pulsed with energy, almost as if the planet could feel their presence. It's like walking on a heartbeat, Pierce muttered. Let's move, Rowe ordered. They made their way toward a towering gateway, guarded by towering alien sentinels. Using cloaking fields, they slipped past the guards and entered the inner chamber. Inside, the air shimmered with light and sound, as if reality itself were bending. In the center of the room floated a massive crystal, glowing with blue fire. Rowe's communicator crackled. Then came the voice he'd waited months to hear. Rowe. It was faint, trembling, but it was Mira. You shouldn't have come. Rowe smiled despite the danger. You said that last time, remember? We don't leave our own behind. The light pulsed violently. You don't understand, Mira said, her voice layered with static. They're awake now. They know you're here. Alarms blared. The walls around them began to shift, forming into monstrous shapes, warriors of metal and flesh. Pierce shouted, "She's right, they're activating the defense grid." Rowe raised his rifle. Then let's finish what we started. The battle erupted instantly. Blue fire and plasma bolts tore through the chamber as the Ghost Squadron fought for their lives. The creatures came in waves, screaming in alien tongues. Myra's voice echoed through the chaos, guiding them. Left corridor, faster, she shouted. There's a control node ahead. Rowe sprinted forward, blasting through a wall of drones. At the heart of the chamber stood the node, a pulsating sphere of light connected to the planet's core. Pierce began hacking into it, his fingers flying over the controls. If I can link this to Myra's frequency, I might stabilize her connection. Do it. Rowe shouted, holding off the advancing swarm. Sparks flew as alien blades clashed with human steel. What I couldn't. Finish it. Rowe fired.